You know when someone just goes quiet on you? We immediately call it the silent treatment, right? We assume they're being cold or distant, maybe even manipulative. But what if that silence isn't a weapon at all? Today, we are decoding the hidden truth behind why some of the most sensitive people withdraw into silence and what's really happening underneath the surface.
And this quote, wow, it just hits the nail on the head. That silence? It's not an absence of emotion. It is the exact opposite. It's not a sign of feeling nothing. It's a sign that someone is feeling so much that they've become completely and utterly overwhelmed. And this really breaks it down, doesn't it? On the outside, yeah, it can look like a calculated move. But internally, it's often a sign that someone has hit their absolute limit of emotional processing. They're not trying to push you away, they are desperately trying to hold themselves together. Okay, so where does this response even come from? Well, its foundation is actually wired directly into our nervous system, so think of it as a protective mechanism, not an aggressive one. Let's dive into the science behind it. Most of us know all about fight or flight. When you're faced with a threat, you either confront it head-on or you run. But psychology points to a third, equally important response, freeze. And this one is absolutely crucial for understanding silent withdrawal. So when someone experiences this intense emotional or sensory overload, their brain can literally shut down the part responsible for finding words. In that moment, silence isn't a choice. It's a physiological shield. It's the body trying to protect itself from any more emotional harm by turning inward to recalibrate. So that's the physiological how, the freeze response. But now let's explore the psychological why. We're going to look at 6 common experiences that can trigger that freeze response and lead to silent withdrawal. You'll see they really fall into 2 main buckets: defenses we learned in the past and overloads we're facing in the present.
First up, and this one is huge. For many people, this isn't a conscious choice at all. It's a learned survival skill. It's a pattern that often gets wired in during childhood, a time when going quiet was the only way to feel safe.
And this often stems from something psychologists call emotional invalidation. Just think about it. If, as a kid, you cried and were told to stop being so dramatic, or you tried to share your feelings and were just ignored, well, your brain learned a very powerful lesson. It learned that expressing yourself just leads to more pain. It learned that talking didn't work, so it started seeing silence as the only safe way forward. All right, the second reason is communication burnouts. And it's so important to get this. This kind of withdrawal is rarely an impulsive act. It's usually the final step after a long, exhausting period of trying so hard to be heard. You've likely tried to explain yourself. You've pointed out patterns, asked for understanding, and repeated your feelings over and over again. But when all that effort leads to nothing, no change, your brain starts to see any more communication as just a waste of precious energy. Silence then becomes a way to stop participating in a cycle that only ends with you feeling unheard. Number 3, some people's minds are just wired differently. They process social input at a much higher volume. They're built to absorb every little detail from their surroundings, from subtle shifts in tone to tiny micro-expressions. I absolutely love this metaphor because it's so on point. People with this high cognitive sensitivity are tracking everything at once. In a conflict or even just a loud social setting, their brain gets totally overstimulated, and that battery just drains. Withdrawing is how they find a quiet space to process all that incoming noise. Now, the fourth reason is a surprising one. They're not going silent to harm the relationship. They're actually trying to protect it from the power of their own words. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but it's incredibly important. You see, people who withdraw are often hyper-aware of how much words can hurt. They feel their own emotions so intensely that they're terrified of saying something irreversible in the heat of the moment. So in this case, staying quiet is a form of extreme self-control. It's a way to manage the storm internally so they don't cause permanent harm. The fifth reason is a deep-seated fear of being a burden. This is all rooted in the belief that your own feelings are just too heavy or too inconvenient for other people to deal with. This is what we call the strong friend dilemma. You might be the person who comforts everyone else, but you process all your own pain in private. You've somehow convinced yourself that staying quiet is the kinder choice, even if it leaves you feeling completely invisible. And our final reason, solitude becomes a sanctuary. In a world that can feel so chaotic, silence is a way to reclaim a little bit of control and safety.
I mean, if you grew up in a chaotic or judgmental environment, you learned pretty early on that control equals safety. So withdrawing into your own silence becomes this powerful act of self-regulation. It's a predictable space where no one can misinterpret you or demand more energy than you have left to give.
So if any of this is resonating with you, it is absolutely crucial that you understand this next part. This is not about something being wrong with you.
Let that really sink in for a moment. Your silence is not a character flaw. It is a learned, adaptive response from a time when your voice just wasn't enough to keep you safe. You learned to protect yourself in the only way you knew how.
But here's the thing. While silence protects your peace, it can also lead to a quiet kind of loneliness. Being strong for a long time doesn't mean you aren't allowed to get tired. So the goal isn't to stay silent forever. It's to become selective, to learn when your energy is better protected by saying nothing, and to recognize who is actually safe enough to speak to. And that leads us to a final question to really think about. Is your silence a shield for yourself, or is it a shield for others? Understanding that distinction, well, that can change everything. Because you deserve to be heard, not just handled.